How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out Australian independence from colony to colony by the channel Corner of Knowledge. Links will be down in the description section down below, as always. And this is something that is definitely interesting to me because I wasn't aware that Australia had independence. I thought that they were still controlled by Britain. I thought it was part of like the British Commonwealth and stuff. The Queen is on your money and everything else, I believe, right? So I don't know how exactly it works. That's why I'm watching it. So thanks for watching with me. I do appreciate the support. And let's definitely check this out because this is going to be an interesting video for me.
Australian independence was not an instantaneous event. Like the other dominions of the British Empire, it was a gradual affair. To explore this topic, we have to consider how modern-day Australia came to be. So without further ado, let's crack on. Following the Dutch acknowledgement of the continent in 1606, the British soon after charted their way around the Southern Pacific, eventually culminating in James Cook's recommendation for settlement in the 1770s. This opportunity was seized by the British government who, having been kicked out of North America during the American Revolution, were looking for somewhere new to send convicts. Yes, this was a time when stealing a piece of bread could get you shipped off 9,000 miles to a semi-desert. Nowadays, you need 2 degrees and a PhD to get into Australia. Anyways, I digress. After establishing the colony of New South Wales in 1788, the British government began gradual colonisation of Australia's exterior, a process.
So was they from Wales then? The Wales part of Britain, I would assume then, right? Because they named, or at least they named it after that, of course, New South Wales.
Exterior, a process facilitated by Southeast Australia's rich potential for agriculturalisation. As colonial settlement accelerated, newer colonies were created, and the first non-convict colony of South Australia was established in 1834.
Non-convict? Is that what they said?
Was established in 1834, and the first non-convict colony of South Australia was established in 1834. Other colonies soon followed. Many were granted responsible government in the 1850s, and they would go on to form the modern-day Australian states. Fueled by the discovery of gold in the 1850s and 60s, economic growth soon followed, and the agricultural sector diversified into one of mining, finance, and even business. With this growth came the development of a distinct identity, one which saw itself firmly rooted in the British Empire, especially as the nature of Australian settlement had diluted the ethno-linguistic characteristics of settlers.
And it's now known as the purest form of English. Some of the language or some of the dialects there.
1890s, Australian living standards had exceeded that of Britain, and at the time, the empire was seen as a viable economic sphere. As such, when the empire was tested during the Boer War, Australian colonies volunteered some 16,000 recruits. One recruit stated that, if an expedition to Antarctica in canoes was proposed, half our fellows would volunteer. Pretty stern stuff coming from that chap. In the year 1901...
I don't think anybody should go to don't go to Antarctica in a canoe. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's not a good idea.
The Australian colonies decided to federalise, practically forming the entity we know as modern-day Australia, and the nation was granted self-government within the British Empire as a British Dominion. The early 1900s are a controversial period in Australian history. On the one hand, we see the growth of a functional democracy, and on the other, we see the development of a White Australia policy, and the accelerated marginalisation of Aboriginal peoples and Asian workers. Australian politicians attempted to keep Australia firmly entrenched within the empire, and any attempts by London to liberalise trade away from the empire were met with rebuke by the Australian government at the 1907 and 1911 imperial conferences. Even when an Australian Royal Navy was established in 1911, it mainly pursued British interests, and was, in reality, a Pacific branch of the British fleet. As with the rest of the empire, Australia was automatically taken into war in 1914 by Britain. Though the Australian response was keen and patriotic, casualties soon mounted on the Western Front, and in 1950
World War One, so they got drafted. So the British Crown was like, "No, you don't have a choice. Like, come fight for us." That sucks.
And in 1915, Australians suffered the brunt of the Gallipoli Campaign, an event which forged a unique Australian identity. Thereafter, Australia took seat on the newly formed Imperial War Cabinet. Australia now had a say on how the war was being run. This marked a departure from Britain ruling the roost.
So what countries are these? So that's Canada, that's Australia, that's Britain. Okay. This over here I guess is New Zealand probably. What is this guy? What is that? What is I don't know what I'm looking at here. What country is that? I don't know.
Australia then showed its nationhood at the war's closure by signing the Treaty of
Is that South Africa? Is that how South Africa's shaped? I don't know.
Versailles separately to that of Britain, alongside the other British dominions. The 1920s.
Yeah, South Africa. Or India? That wasn't India, was it? Wait a minute. Is that India? That's not the, no, that's not India. No, that's absolutely not the shape of India. Yeah, so that was South Africa, I'm pretty sure. Let me know, of course, correct me if I'm wrong. Or let me know if I'm right too. That'd be awesome also.
The 1920s was a weird time for Australia. Whereas Canada and South Africa were seeking imperial devolution, Australia was seeking to tie the empire together more tightly. At the 1926 Balfour Declaration, the Australian PM was in complete disagreement with the notion that Australia should be seen to be equal to that of Britain, believing that it challenged the very nature of empire. Australia was even more despondent to the passage of the Statute of Westminster in 1931, a statute which practically gave Australia full independence. It's necessary to understand that Australia was fully geared towards the notion of empire, both economically and culturally, and therefore differed from Canada and South Africa, which were bicultural societies and had begun to pursue their own economic endeavours. Yet, as we will soon see, Australia's links with Britain were not impervious. During World War II, Singapore was seen as the Empire's fortress of the East, and with its collapse in the February of 1942, the then Australian Prime Minister, John Curtin, withdrew Australian troops back from the Middle East towards Australia in anticipation for Japanese invasion. He even publicly declared that Australia was looking to the United States for support, a statement which saw Australia stepping out of the imperial fold. This event pitted Australian interests against British interests, and Australian interests had won. Australia was now beginning to see the world outside of the British Empire, and in doing so, it was looking for a place in this new world.
So before that, it was talking about how they didn't want to be separate, right? They didn't want to be looked at as equals to the crown because they're like, no, that would challenge the notion of an empire. Like basically saying like, no, we're not an empire. The British crown is an empire. Like so they didn't want to like take that, you know, title is how it seems. But of course things change.
After the war, although Australia was independent as a result of ratifying the Treaty of Westminster in 1942, it would give military aid to Britain during decolonisation, throughout the Malayan Emergency and the Borneo Crisis. And, as the Suez Canal was the lifeline for British trade with Australia, it would even support Britain during the embarrassing 1956 Suez Canal crisis. However, with the UK's loss of the Suez Canal, and with the end of empire in sight, Australia began to look elsewhere for trade. Australia was almost forced by circumstance to become distinct from Britain, an anomaly when compared to the other nations of the European empires. Well, folks, that's just about it for me. If you enjoy.
Okay, so I got questions. Of course, a lot of good information. Everybody's saying it's a great video. So I'm assuming the information is correct. Fill in the gaps. You heard the questions I had during it, my confusions and whatnot. Let me know, please. And do me a favor and hit like and subscribe. It doesn't take anything but a second of your time, and it helps more than you know. I appreciate it so much. Helps the channel grow, helps the videos get seen by more people, and all that stuff. So thanks for watching with me, guys. You guys have a super fun, awesome day, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care, bye.